Chapter 1, Afterthoughts. I don't really know what to say so much about the afterthoughts on this one. I do remember that writing this book was the first time I realized like how much I went through when I was 12, and writing the first few chapters that actually got cut a lot. The first few chapters were a lot longer originally, and a lot of it was not necessary for the book, which is why I cut it. What it was necessary for was me processing a bunch of emotions that I didn't even know that I had left under the surface. And throughout this whole book, it was when I cried the most when I was writing. I actually mainly worked on chapter 1 and chapter 2 during Thanksgiving, I believe, of 2023. And I spent the whole Thanksgiving just bawling. Like, I just cried the whole time because I cried over my dog. That was like, there was so much just grief and stuff about him that I still didn't realize was under the surface. And then I also cried mostly about my teacher. And what I had realized in that writing process was there were a lot of needs that I wasn't getting met at home, that I was getting met at school because of how powerful like my 4th and 5th grade teacher was. And when I say powerful, I mean powerful in the way of how much she like took care of the class and how much she cared. I mean, I played club volleyball and she came to some of my club volleyball games. And I hate to say this, and this is something I've wrestled with a lot in my adult years of, is it true? Like, I hope to break this, and I think there is just a part of this that's a part of life, but that whole saying of, you never know what you have until it's gone, because we don't know fully the depth and capacity of what we'll miss until it is gone. And so when I didn't have she was my teacher for 4th and 5th grade, actually. When I didn't have her anymore and I moved to where it felt, the 6th grade teacher, it was very much just a job for her, which, to be fair to her, she had her first kid, she was postpartum. Like, there was so much stuff that, again, a 6th grader maybe couldn't fully see or grasp or understand. But it was this teacher who teaching was just a job, coming from a teacher who teaching was her life. I mean, she coached track. I lost my first horse in 4th grade when I was in her class, and my mom had emailed the school just to say like, hey, this is what's going on. Take it easy on Michaela, kind of a thing. And so my teacher knew about it, and when I got to school that day, she had put she put a card and flowers on my desk. And she always, like, the first day of school, we had to fill out a form, and she would give us a card. Like, she asked what our favorite candy was, and we always had a card and candy. Like, and it wasn't, that was the other special thing. Like, it wasn't, because I think I always said Hershey's, and it wasn't like the fun size Hershey bar. Like, she always got us a full size Hershey bar. The school never paid her for that. That was just something she did, like, out of the goodness of her heart. The kids that had summer birthdays, she always gave them their card and their candy on their half birthdays. She literally, like, I feel myself getting emotional just thinking about, like, how much she cared. And even, after my horse died, I ended up crying. There was a whole situation with the janitor that I got upset about, and I was crying. And I just remember, because the janitor told me to wipe my feet, and I didn't wipe them. Our janitor was just a jerk. And I didn't wipe my feet properly coming in from recess, and he made me wipe them again. And then I didn't wipe, but I was so out of it. And so he'd yelled at me like 3 times, and I started crying. And then he's like, why is she crying? And, my teacher, my 4th or 5th grade teacher, just ran up to me and gave me a hug and like took me into class. And she looked at him. She's like, she just lost her horse yesterday. And that dude never talked to me again. But that was just the kind of person she was. And so as I was writing this book, there was so much grief around losing that, and then my dog. And it's interesting because, like, I've never felt that grief. There's been so much things with the sexual assaults that obviously we'll talk about more. I don't want to talk about them all right here that come up, but it was so interesting to me that was where I was the most emotional, was talking about Hootie, thinking about Hootie, and then also with leaving my elementary school, which was called Cottrell Elementary. And I didn't really realize that I had all those feelings towards it until I was writing the book. I didn't realize that I did feel like I lost my family. And yeah, we were really dysfunctional, but we always loved each other. Like the girl that I didn't use people's real names, I used pseudonames in the book, but the girl's name is Tracy. Like she was always lying about something, and we never knew what Tracy was going to lie about, but it was always entertaining and it was always interesting. And guess what? We still loved her anyway. And that was the beauty of it. Like there was all these other kids that, yeah, we had our problems, but like we still all loved each other anyway. And we were always there for each other. And even on our 5th grade field trip, our teacher, the one that I'm talking about, had talked the school into doing just a 1-day trip to the coast. We ended up doing a 3-day trip to the coast. And no one, from what I remember, like no one really fought. Like we all, yeah, there were issues, but we all got along so well. And even there was one kid, like his family wasn't going to be able to afford to take him. And he had never, like we only live like an hour and a half from the beach. And he had never been to the beach just because of his family's financial situation. And again, we all knew this. Like we all knew what kids like had money. We all knew what kids struggled. And yet all of us would always come together. And so we all did fundraisers to make sure that every single, I don't think there might have been one kid who couldn't come, but I don't think so. I think all of us kids went on that field trip and we all made sure we all had the money to do it. And the parents that had more money pitched more money in so that we could have these extra experiences. I mean, we went to the Tillamook Cheese Factory. We stayed in yurts. We did Lewis and Clark experiences. We went down to the Newport Beach and we all got to sleep in the aquarium and the tunnels, and it was just great. And that was, the first time writing this book was the first time I really grieved that loss of, we were never going to have that again. And we were so lucky that we went to this really small elementary school because we were all able to do that for each other. So yeah, that was the most interesting thing about writing chapter 1 was all these emotions that I didn't expect to come up, all this grief that I never expected to feel over things I never expected to feel upset about, like all came up. But then it also, like the beauty of it was realizing like how loved we were and how all these, like love can come from places you would never experience or expect. And not just love, but care, like very intentional care by, this teacher. And I do really think about they say one teacher can really change and impact your life. And when I think about her, and I also, so she had a yellow lab, and then Hootie, the dog I lost, was a yellow lab. And when she found out, because my sister, I believe was in her class at that point, or somehow my teacher that I've been talking about, I'm trying not to say her name for just respect, but she found out my dog, she emailed me. Like I wasn't even her student anymore. And she emailed me saying she was sorry about my dog. When she came and watched me play volleyball later, I was no longer her student. And it wasn't just me. Like she always said, if you have a sports game, like I want to come and I want to support you. And she would bring her papers that she had to grade, and she would go watch kids play baseball. She'd go watch kids play basketball. She came and watched me play volleyball. And it was like a couple hour drive. Like my club tournaments were never close by, and she came, and just, it really reminded me that one person really does have the power to change our lives. And so I wasn't really expecting to talk this much about her, but she deserves the airspace. She deserves the mic time. And she really just had a very special impact on me as a kid. And it was really beautiful and hard for me to like have all those emotions and all that grief come up. But then also I just felt so special that my life got touched by someone like her. So that's really my afterthoughts about chapter 1. And so without further ado, let's get into chapter 2.